Hey everybody, today I'm going to be showing you guys a build I've been playing that is absolutely slapping in Diablo 4. So, it revolves around this new Ashava's boss power and a couple of other things. So real fast, I just want to go ahead and show you guys what that combo is, just so you guys can get an idea of why this build is actually working. And this is a seasonal build. You can still play Poison Creeper, but it won't be as good as it is this season. Because there were changes made that made Poison Creeper an actual viable build. But yeah, so let's go ahead and hop on into those changes and what those are. So first off, we have this aspect of the Rabid Bear. So while Grizzly Rage is active, your skills are going to apply rabies, and your poison damage is going to be increased by 180%. So this actually got added in a previous season. It didn't work with Poison Creeper. The reason why it didn't work with Poison Creeper is very simple, because you couldn't use Poison Creeper in Grizzly Rage. That was the issue. Because you couldn't use Poison Creeper and Grizzly Rage, it's, you know what I mean? Like, it was, kind of unfortunate, right? So this is pretty much just useless. Honestly, it was a pretty useless legendary up until this season, in my opinion, because the only other poison skill that Druid has to play around is Rabies. So, I mean, and Rabies sucks. I'm going to be honest. Like, this ability sucks. So you can see here, like, look at the damage difference. So Rabies does like 239,000 damage, and that's, compared to just base Poison Creeper before the multipliers and stuff are being added in, is doing like 7.7 million, right? Like damaging over, over however many seconds, right? So, yeah, you just got to keep in mind, like, that's, like, Rabies is just significantly worse. Now, I do have a bunch of Poison Creeper duration on, so that juices up that damage a lot, but it's redonkulous, like, how bad Rabies is. So this is pretty much just a useless, kind of a meme-worthy legendary, in my opinion. I mean, I guess you could potentially use it with, like, Toxic Claws. You could do Shred Grizzly Rage, and then you could have gotten the bonus to top. But, like, even that's not very good. So, because it does 24% of their base damage, so it's pretty much a useless legendary. But in this season, once you are at 5 ranks of Grizzly Rage, you can now cast companion skills. That just got added in Season 8. So now you can use all your companion skills in Grizzly Rage. Now for your Wolves and your Ravens, this isn't that big of a deal. I don't think using Grizzly Rage is better than Cataclysm, because it takes away your access to Bestial Rampage. Well, I mean, I guess you could just do the bear form version, but, like, I don't know. I feel like it's still just better to do, like, Cataclysm or even Petrify, I think, is what other people are doing. That being said, with Poison Creeper, it's different because of the fact that we have this massive legendary that's giving us a 180% damage amp. Like, there's really no reason to go any other ultimate other than Grizzly Rage with Poison Creeper now because of that fact. And on top of that, let me go ahead and show you guys. So this also was changed last season, but again, we didn't really have a skill that actually took advantage of this until this season. It's called Raging Shred. So now, after you do your third attack, it gives you a poison damage buff of 150% multiplicatively. So it causes enemies to take 150% multiplicatively increased poison damage for 5 seconds. So that means in Grizzly Rage, we also want to be in the wolf form so we can have access to this massive multiplier. So when we come over here and you'll see that I have Dire Wolf's aspect on, that really is coming with a 150% multiplicative damage amp. That's why I'm running it. Otherwise, I'd probably just do the bear form one, because then what you could also do, if you just did the bear form one, is you could throw on Wild Heart Hunger and you could actually use Bestial Rampage. But the thing is that while that does give you a 180% boost to your companion skill, that actually isn't going to affect your Ashava's Poison Breath as much, right? Because you also would have to run Aspect of the Wild Rage, which would be like which would take up another legendary slot, and it would only buff the damage of your Poison Creeper. Whereas when you do Dire Wolf, you get that 150% multiplicative damage amp to all your poison effects. Why in the heck does this do this? I have this issue every single time. Come on now. There we go. Yeah, but yeah. So that's that. But that's pretty much how the build works. We're just using Poison Creeper, resetting it constantly while we're inside of Grizzly Rage to just amplify the damage of our Poison Creeper to astronomical levels, and then once we have some poison with Poison Creeper on, we use the Ashava's power which then increases this damage by 10% per 1%. So I mean, you do like the math on that. Like if you have, let's say 30-40% of their health already in poison with that's like it's like a oh, I don't even want to do the math on that, but that's a lot of damage. Like that's a lot of extra damage when you consider Shaven's poison breath is doing 8,000% poisoning damage. It is a lot, because remember, all these are rank 1. Okay, next up, the next power I also want to go over, because this is important, because you're going to wonder why the heck I'm running this specific glyph. And this is also really important for those of you that are going to be doing this like pre-Paragon 200, when you have access to all 5 of your boards. Like if you decide, oh, you want to play this while leveling, you need to keep this in mind. There is a massive boss power called Beastmaster's Training that we run. So this says 17%. In my previous video, when I released my companion, like just Wolf Companion Guide, I just totally spaced the fact that this is actually a 150% multiplicative damage boost. I couldn't remember what the max was from the PTR. I would have had to have went and looked, but yeah, it's 150% actually. That's the max after you rank this up all the way. So you get a 150% multiplicative damage boost to your summons, specifically. But that being said, you have to stack critical strike damage in order to get this multiplicative damage buff. So you're going to see that whenever you're in the beginning of gearing and you don't have access to higher level glyphs and stuff like that, you actually want to put crit damage on your gear. You're going to have to actually play a juggling game with this and having some crit damage on your gear to make sure you're maxing this out. Now, I am going to show you a couple of ways to mitigate this, but it is going to be... So for the first thing is use Avian Wrath. Make sure you're always using Avian Wrath, because whatever crit damage you do get, you will be like, it'll multiply it by a lot, so you don't need as much. So you'll see here on my weapon, I have 145% here, and I actually need to change that. I don't think I need, in the very, very final version, whenever you have your glyphs up to like 100, you actually don't need Avian Wrath, but until then you do. And then all you have to do is run Spirit. Right, so critical strikes increase the damage an enemy takes from you by 3%, 15%, and then you get like almost 500% critical strike damage from this running it here. So you need 600% critical strike damage on your gear to get the 150% bonus, if my math isn't wrong. So you need to keep that in mind when you're gearing, but whenever you're at max, all it takes is throw the Spirit Glyph in, and throw this in, because there isn't really another good glyphs anyway, and this will give you all of the crit you need to assure you can do that. And then you can run things like poison damage and damage over time like on your rings and amulets after that, right? Okay, so that being said, I guess I'll go ahead and hop over. So the other 2 boss powers, we're running Cinerat's Flames. This is a 25% increase to poison damage. That's just based on your how many resistance you have to an element. So you're going to be capped, so you're going to end up getting like the 30% pretty easy to get to that. And then we have Andariel's Flaming Skull. So this goes up to, I think, about 25% damage. That's another 25% from your damage over time effects. So you can see that in this indirectly affects Ashavas, because it's increasing our Poison Creeper damage, which is giving us more of the 10% poisoning for each 1%. You see what I'm saying? So, yeah, it turns into being quite a lot, but it's pretty cool. So, the other cool thing about this build is, believe it or not, running, there's not really a whole lot of good unique options for this build, and on top of that, even uber unique options aren't really all that great. So all you really need is a Storm's Companion, and you're kind of good to go. You need the Storm's Companion still for your pack leader, so you can reset your Poison Creeper constantly. But that being said, yeah, you don't I have 1 unique, and it's Storm's Companion. Like, you can get this very, very quickly. And as long as you're stacking crit, you will still get pack leader resets as well. So keep that in mind, because remember, you are going to be using Claw a lot, and Claw is one of the best things to reset it with, because it has a high lucky hit chance. Shred, not so much, but in AoE, Shred will still proc it. So even before you get Storm's Companion, you'll still be getting an alright amount of resets with this setup, but you definitely are going to want that to get like that perma reset. But yeah, it's kind of hard to run anything. You could potentially run Tyrael's Might or sorry, Shroud of False Death or something like that. But even then, I'm not 100% certain if you want to. But I guess Shroud of False Death I could maybe see, but it's the thing. And then with your stats, it's so hard to get the defensive stats. It's gonna be a little awkward. I mean, you could change some things around for sure to be able to run like an Uber Unique if you got one and you really wanted to, but there's no Uber Uniques that are required, and specifically in the Helm slot, you're going to lose damage if you take an Uber Unique in your Helm slot. So let's go ahead and actually hop on into the gear now. So first we have Spirit Bond aspect. I just run this because it's just damage reduction. Like, that's really all I'm running it for. Keeping your wolves alive isn't a big deal. It doesn't do much for you. Aside from just keeps your damage up more consistent from your Shepherd's aspect. We are doing Nagu Set in this, so the typical, for every one active summon you have, gain offering for each summon up to 6 summons, and that's going to summon a Spirit Wolf Companion to attack enemies for you. So this kind of does keep, I guess, your Shepherds up a decent amount better, but it's not like a massive deal. I'm just mainly running it for damage reduction, and I like the utility of the fact that it makes my wolves not die. So there is that, I suppose. Now we have, on top of that, we have Poison Creeper armor, cooldown reduction, Poison Creeper duration, and Debilitating Roar cooldown reduction. So because we want to take 8 ranks into Poison Creeper, that's the reason why we don't want to run anything, because you have to think about it like this. If I only have access to 5 ranks of Poison Creeper, okay, and I take the 5 ranks and I turn it into 10, that's a 100% damage increase over what I had before. So that means unless there's a multiplicative multiplier that gives me over 100% damage, these plus 8 ranks to Poison Creeper are going to just be better for me. So there isn't anything out there that's actually going to give you that amount of damage. Now, you could potentially argue maybe Harlequins, but then you also have to remember you lose temperings on this. And temperings are extremely important for the Poison Creeper build because you get Poison Creeper duration. Poison Creeper duration means you're going to put more percent life poisoned on them by stacking this stat, which means your Ashavas is going to do even more. Like, I still need to test it out to see if it's actually just worth just making sure that you masterwork your Poison Creeper duration over everything. I'm not 100% sure yet, but that might honestly potentially even be a pretty solid play. I'd have to see how much it is and do the math, but I'll have to test it out later. But for now, I know on the helmet, going Poison Creeper or going for the ranks of Poison Creeper is definitely going to be best. But still, you want to have access to the Poison Creeper duration. That's why it's really hard to run uniques and run these other things, because you are genuinely losing a lot of damage when you don't have the Poison Creeper duration piece on. So remember that while you're thinking about it. And then we do have Debilitating Roar, which seems odd because you say, well, wait, we're doing the wolf form. Well, that brings me to the chest piece. We are going to turn Debilitating Roar into a werewolf skill, and it's now going to immobilize poisoned enemies. I don't really care about the immobilization. I was just turning it into a werewolf skill so I could use it because it's just a really solid defensive cooldown. It's just really good. I really wish I could run Harlequin Crest here because it would actually make your Debilitating Roar a much lower cooldown, but but the thing is with how much damage you lose, I'm still not sure it's worth it. But you still do have Debilitating Roar down a pretty decent ways on the cooldown with running like things like Debilitating Roar cooldown. We run CDR on our helmet. I believe I have CDR on the necklace as well. So yeah, but you want to go armor, max life, resist all. Keep in mind when it comes to your resist all and armor, that's kind of a game you're going to have to play based on what drops. But for damage wise, you just want to make sure you have Poison Creeper duration, and putting percent armor on, even if you choose to like do this same setup, like put Debilitating Roar on your chest piece, it doesn't really matter which way you do it, because like either way it's the same. You just want to have at least one armor tempering on your gear in order to make sure you're hitting the armor cap. The higher up level you get, the easier it is to hit your defenses, but while you're a lower level, you really need that. And you can also consider, if you're doing the starter build, to like temper things like fire resist or whatever resist you need, because armor's a lot easier to get at lower levels. It's kind of like that mid rank where it becomes awkward, like when you're trying to get into World Tier 3, right? But then by the time you're doing World Tier 4, I mean, you should be a high Paragon. Okay, but that's that. Also, I want to point out that another reason why it's kind of important to Rehabilitating Roar is it is a 15% damage buff while it's active, so that's actually kind of nice. Just saying. Just saying. But moving right along onto the gloves. So this turns your Grizzly Rage into a werewolf skill. It's going to give you 30% move speed, 60% spirit cost reduction instead of damage reduction, and in addition, it's going to heal you for 10% of your life. This is actually super nice because we are going to be using Shred a lot because we have to keep up that damage buff every 5 seconds. So like before you actually Poison Creeper, it's like I'm pretty much constantly pressing Shred unless I'm out of spirit, and then I just start clawing, and then once I get enough spirit, I start shredding again, just to make sure I have that 150% damage amp going all the time. But yeah, so that's pretty important. But this also gives you some pretty nice healing whenever you kill stuff, etc., etc. Then we have critical strike chance, damage over time, attack speed, poison creeper duration, and I actually put Grizzly Rage duration on here. You could do something else, but I don't know. I just like the Grizzly Rage duration. I was trying to find a good balance of making sure that you have a pretty good uptime on your Grizzly Rage, because we aren't running an insane amount of stuff that we're not running that or aspect of the Rampaging Werebeast that increases your critical strike damage by 60% multiplicatively, right? So yeah, keep that in mind, which by the way, that is actually a pretty good aspect to run early on in the starter build because if you running Rampaging Werebeast gives you a bigger damage boost than, like, let's say Stampede or what Changeling's Debt are going to give you, because you get closer to that 150%, it's probably worth it to run Rampaging Werebeast if you're struggling to get the crit damage you need. That's actually what I did early on. I'm not running it anymore, but early on that's what I was doing. So moving right along to Storm's Companion. Yes, we don't care about wolf damage, but this does have damage reduction from close. You will be close to everything, and you get that Pack Leader Spirit boon. I don't find a need to really masterwork this. Like, I was recommending it before, but I'm like, it's not really that big of a deal if this isn't masterworked. Like, you're gonna be just resetting all the time, just permanently. So yeah, like just having this item is what does it to like any extent. We'll just, even like I'm at like 70% on that stat, and I'm still just perma resetting. It's just once you get this item, it just unlocks your resets. And since you are going to be close to things a lot, it does give you some pretty solid damage reduction. Okay, we just threw some willpower gems in there. So now we have Metamorphosis Cleats. This gives us access to Unstoppable. We do get Unstoppable for 6 seconds when we activate Grizzly Rage, but I wanted to have it a little bit more just in case. So this ended up, I feel, being pretty good. We get movement speed, plus 8 ranks to rabies. I just do it because even if it puts like 1% extra damage or like life poison damage on an enemy, to me that's worth it, because that's another 10% for Ashavas. So I figure, why not? Alternatively, you could do armor, all resist, some type of defensive stat here to make it easier for you to hit your resistances if you don't really care too much about rabies. Then Poison Creeper duration, and then the Diablo. You move very fast in this build. Like, you move very quickly. So if you don't know what that does, it just gives you movement speed while you're in werewolf form. So right now I get 44% movement speed while in werewolf form. And then you come over here, you think about the direwolf, I get another 30% there. It's like, I got a lot of movement speed. And then I even put some movement speed here. I could actually just put more on that Diablo, which is actually probably what I should do here. I don't know why I didn't put that there. Let me switch that real fast. Yeah, so then we do another one of these, and now we are just 76. So now we're over 100% move speed just for being in werewolf form, which is going to help us with feral aptitude as well, keeping that up. So yeah, moving right along from that, we have our weapon. So I do have crit damage on here. That should be like this and like that. Okay, so I do have crit damage on here, but that's just to make sure that it shores up your Beastmasters, because you need that Spirit Glyph plus this once you have that Spirit Glyph ranked up. However, what you can do is you can swap out the poison damage here for crit damage, and you can actually get pretty early on, as soon as you get like an 800 item power armor, like 200 to 300% of the 600% crit damage you need just from your weapon. And then what you can also do is, if you go and instead of throwing your rune words on your weapon, like most people do, just put Grand Emeralds in here. You can get 72% critical strike damage. That's another way. You can get a ton of the crit you need for Beastmasters just by putting it onto your weapon. Because remember, guys, losing additive damage isn't that big of a deal. Like, yeah, you lose some poison damage, but you're getting if that's what you need to do to get your multiplicative buff early on, it's worth it. Just do that. Okay. But we do Shepherd's Aspect here, so for every companion we have out, it's going to increase our Poison Creeper's damage. We have a ton of companions out, especially when you think about all the Spirit Wolves we're going to have, plus the regular Wolves we're going to have, plus the Poison Creepers and the Ravens. And I'm going to show you guys a couple of cool tricks because of the new passive that got added in Vessel of Hatred. Because you're going to probably notice that I have Ravens with a point in it, but I don't actually have it on my bar. That actually has to do with the passive key skill, but I'll go into that in a little bit. So, come over here. So now we have the Rabbit aspect. So while Grizzly Rage is active, there is an argument, I think, to put this onto your weapon. Because technically, whenever you have Shepherds here and not here, you are losing, like, let's see, what would that be? So 180, this would go up to 240. You are losing like 60% multiplicative damage on your 60% multiplicative damage on your actual Ashavas ability. And so I do think there's an argument that you could put it on your weapon if you wanted to. I think, honestly, whenever you get to that point, you should be doing like tier 4 because you're not going to notice a difference up until that point. Like, or like you're pushing pits or something like that. Like either way, whether you have this on the sword on your weapon or you have shepherds on your weapon, you're not going to notice that big of a difference. And a main reason too is because you got to remember, whenever you put more damage on your poison creeper, that means more % life, which means you're getting more multiplicative damage for it in a different way. So it's like, yeah, there is probably, like, you know, technically a statistically best way to do it, but it's really hard to decipher just because of the way the math works versus of having more duration on there versus 60% more here. I'd honestly probably go to say that having Rabbit on the weapon might end up being the play at higher levels, just because once you have a bunch of companions out, you don't lose as much for losing companions and stuff like that. So yeah, and this multiplier gets so big that it doesn't, even if you lose, like, let's say like 50% or something like that on this, well, if it's coming at a 350%, then it probably isn't that big of a deal. But yeah, so that's kind of that's the deal there with your amulet and your weapon. Those are really just your big poison damage ones. All right. You're gonna want Call of the Wild on that, mainly because there isn't really anything that's gonna buff Ashavas a whole lot. You could also throw Clarity on there if you wanted to buff your rabies damage. I did actually put points into Clarity in the build just because, I mean, why not? Like, you know, after casting Companion skill, your next core Wrath skill's damage is increased. However, I need to actually double check on this because I might end up moving these points somewhere else. Mainly because since I'm not casting rabies, I need to go and double check and make sure that. So I probably should actually take these points. And I'm just going to put these for here until I check that, because that's something that I honestly just thought about. Yeah, because if I'm not actually casting it, I might not actually be getting that, even though this is technically applying rabies to everything. So I'd have to go double check that. But yeah, so Call of the Wild just to boost your poison creeper damage yet again. And then crit chance, Grizzly Rage cooldown. Yeah, you don't need quick shift. Like, there's no reason to run quick shift because it's like you can only trigger this one time. You trigger it one time and that's it. So not really a whole lot of reason to run quick shift in this build, which is probably a plus for a lot of people. There's honestly, this build solves a lot of the problems I think some people that aren't enjoying playing Companion Druid have right now. With minus, it is a Grizzly Rage build, which I know some people don't like that, but this isn't really a shifting build at all. Like, no shifting required. Just, yeah. So you're in the same form. So that being said, we are throwing an armor gem in here. The way you do your gems here is, again, it's just going to be dependent on where you're at. You're going to have to shift these gems around from armor to resist probably all the time as you get upgrades until you get up to that final form. But yeah, Grizzly Rage cooldown reduction, more move speed, good stuff. It's nice not having to look for a bunch of passives. All right, on the ring, we have Aspect to Changeling's Debt. So you deal 65% increased damage while hitting a poisoned enemy as a werebear or a crowd-controlled enemy as a werewolf. We're always in werewolf form, so this is actually pretty valuable. We put a slow on everything, so it's always crowd-controlled with our neurotoxin that gets applied with our poison with rabies. So pretty solid. We went crit chance, damage over time, attack speed, poison damage. And remember, you can always put crit damage on these early on for your Beastmasters if you need it. Grizzly Rage cooldown reduction, just to try to get the Grizzly Rage cooldown reduction pretty low, because you'll find that, yes, it says 17 seconds, and my werebear only lasts 14 seconds. Well, I don't know, I never really had an issue keeping this up at 100% uptime, because the way it's working, and I don't know if this is bugged, because it's been forever since I played Grizzly Rage, it says the duration cannot go above 13.63 seconds. The way it seems to be working is that's just the max amount you can have, not the amount you can be in the form, but like that's the amount you can essentially bank up, right, while you're in it. So like I've been like in Grizzly Rage for like whole dungeons like with very poor gear early on. So yeah, I don't know, that could potentially be a bug. I don't know. Because I don't remember how Grizzly Rage was working before, because it's been aeons since I've even played this ability. But yeah, so that's how that's working currently as of this video. So that's really not a big deal. You should have this up 100% of the time, and it is going to be cool. So that being said, moving on to the next one, we have Aspect of the Stampede. So gain 1 additional companion. Another thing you can do, again, if you really want to, so once you're at max gear, you're going to want to run Aspect of the Stampede early on for sure. But another option here is going to be doing this rabies one. So you have this rabies one that does 50% increased damage to anything affected by rabies. This is actually pretty solid because it will impact your Ashava's damage, whereas this Aspect of the Stampede is not. So this is also one of the spots where if you had an Uber unique, you could potentially run it, and that is the what's it called? Ring of Starless Skies. You could technically run the Ring of Starless Skies here in this build, and it actually wouldn't be too bad. But you want to wait until later when you have a bunch of werewolves, a bunch of like wolf companions, because remember, the more of a bonus you have, the less value you get out of getting an extra 20% or whatever. So it's like, if I have, 400 or 500% of Shepherd's damage and I lose 75% damage, I'm only really losing 20% damage, right? So then if I'm gaining 50% back with that rabies aspect, I've actually lost nothing, right? Now, there is something to be said about having like a third poison creeper to keep applying poison to things. But technically, if you're talking about maximizing Ashava's damage, running rabies here eventually should theoretically be the best thing. But personally, I like just running Stampede because I just like having a lot of companions. It's kind of just fun for me. So, but I wanted to point that out if you are that type of person that really wants to have like every little detail maxed out, every little thing, right? So, yeah. And I just threw some all resist gems in here because once you get to like, Paragon 300 and stuff like that, this is like the tippity top of like the bare minimum of everything you can run on your gear to hit your defenses. Now, going over Spirit Boons, Wariness, Scythe Talons, Avian Wrath, which at Paragon 300, you can actually take this off and go Iron Feather, and you will still have so you see, you still have 6 from items in Paragon, and then if you do this, I believe it will. Oh no, it's not even it's not even factoring this into here on max roll. It doesn't look like, but you don't need to run this once you get to like a certain point. So remember that as well. So you can just switch over here and just get the 30% max life or the attack speed, probably the max life. But for the most part, you're going to be running Avian Wrath until you get to really, really high gear levels. Pack Leader, this lets us reset the Poison Creeper, and then Masochistic. Since we are running a bunch of shapeshifting skills, I actually found this to be pretty useful, and I didn't really see a reason to run Calm Before the Storm because I haven't been having any issues keeping my Grizzly Rage up, even at low gear levels. Like, guys, I was having Grizzly Rage up like 100% of the time, and I didn't even have like any of this Grizzly Rage cooldown stuff going on. Like, it's yeah. Like, I actually got called to another job, so I don't know if I'm gonna be a. So I'm gonna continue to try to test this out whenever I get time, but it's like I'm not even at like super max gear, and I'm just crushing everything right now. So that is that's pretty nice. It'll be interesting to see how far it goes, like in the pit or something like that, though, because I don't know if it's like I don't necessarily know if it's like some uber broken top tier S tier build, but it is a fun build, if nothing else. So now let's go ahead and come over here to our skills, and let's go ahead and go over those. So claw, enhanced claw. You don't really get enough poison out of this, I feel like, to be relevant. So I don't really run either of these. I don't think there's a reason to run either of them anymore. Come down here, get some crit chance, because remember, we have to crit in order to do pack leader. That's why we still stack crit even though it's a poison build. Shred with the raging shred for that 150% poison damage amp. Add a bunch of extra move speed here. Since we're never really going into bear form, you don't really get to take advantage of Iron Fur, but that's okay. Coming down here, we have backlash when we use a defensive skill. We have 2 defensive skills, so we actually have pretty good backlash uptime. Ancestral Fortitude, and then Vigilance. We also have pretty good Vigilance uptime because we used 2 defensive skills. And there was another change made to Blood Howl, so now when you hit a boss, it still reduces its cooldown. Secondly, there was another change made last season as well where you deal 25% increased damage until you shapeshift out of werewolf form. We never shapeshift after werewolf form, so this is actually a 25% damage amp for running this. Pretty good. Pretty good. You're going to start to see kind of like why this does so much damage. It's like there's just so many little damage amps you're getting from so many random places. I'd say the biggest issue with this build is the lack of Paragon synergy, like, to be honest with you. Then you have innate debilitating roar, deal 15% increased damage while active. That's pretty good, I think. Just saying, that's pretty good. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Now actually, hold on, let me do this. Maybe, I'm trying to think of what to do with these 3 points. I'm going to leave this here, but you could actually just do this and make your wolves fortify you as well. That's also not a bad play, I don't think. So, moving right along here, we have Feral Aptitude, Call the Wild, Ravens, Enhanced Ravens, Brutal Ravens. So the reason why we don't have these on the bar is because if you go down here, you gain the passive effect of your Ravens, Wolves, and Poison Creeper. So you don't need to run this on your bar. You just need to make sure you have a point here and you have the 5 Ravens all the time attacking things, because you always have the passive effect because of this one with nature. Okie dokie then. Then we have our Poison Creeper with Enhanced Poison Creeper, and then Ferocious Poison Creeper. So this doubles, or adds 3 seconds to the duration, so it just adds more poisoning damage, percent life, pretty much, which is why we run it. And it's actually quite a lot, especially early on before you have a bunch of Poison Creeper duration stacked. So we go Feral Aptitude, 9%, 9%. While these are above 100%, these bonuses can stack. Call the Wild, 120%. Extra damage to your companion skill. Pretty solid stuff. This just does more damage when things are distant, and it also deals additional damage if they're slowed, stunned, immobilized. So they're always going to be slowed, so we're always getting 15%. And then if they happen to do the distant enemies, we get another 15%. But I personally think that 15% alone is enough to justify this. We're not really ever in human form, so I don't really need that. Yeah, Rabies. Enhanced Rabies, this increases its damage by 60%. This makes the damage happen faster. So that's something to look at. And then Neurotoxin, we don't really crit, so Envenom, or we don't really gain a bonus from critting, so Envenom and Toxic Claws aren't particularly a thing. Yeah, so okay, keep on going. Defensive posture, increase the amount of fortify you gain from all sources, and 9% damage reduction while fortified. And then catastrophe, 15% damage for 8 seconds after casting an ultimate skill, which, honestly, man, I feel like I actually am trolling, and this is definitely the play right here. Oh, I think this is actually the play to help keep your fortify up. Okay, so Grizzly Rage. Get a bunch. So it says gain 8% of your max life is fortified per second while Grizzly Rage is active. So you are still fortifying just from your Grizzly Rage. You also get some unstoppable, so that's cool. And then you get like a 75% damage bonus, and you no longer get the damage reduction because we're doing the Direwolf version, but you do get the spirit cost reduction and the extra movement speed. So, yeah, that's the skills. That's kind of the reason why we run it the way we do. Don't have ravens on the bar because it's not necessary. Don't need to have wolves on the bar. That's not necessary either because of our awesome one with nature. Yeah, that's the skills. Now let's go ahead, hop on over into the Paragon, and we'll be able to wrap this up. So unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of good synergy with the legendary Paragon nodes, which kind of sucks, but oh well, I guess. So first we have Tracker. So this is going to give our poisoning damage effects 40% multiplicatively longer. This is really, really good. Very big damage boost because of that. So we do want to pick that up pretty good. That's one of our core ones. Then we come up here, get Untamed. This is going to give our Poison Creeper a bunch of extra damage. Wilds is going to give the passive portion a bunch of damage on top of a bunch of good additive damage. And we do actually get a critical strike damage multiplier here. So this makes it need less crit to get the Beastmasters up and running. And then, you can see we get some pretty decent amounts of companion damage here and all that. So, moving right along, we have Spirit. We do run this simply because it gives us like all the crit we need. But keep in mind that we do get a 15% damage amp from this anyway, because it increases the amount of damage they take from me by 15% for 20 seconds. So that's pretty good. Even without it, we still get actual damage value out of this on top of it making it easier for us to have our Beastmasters up. So I think it's pretty worth it to still run this. Then we come up here, pick up defensive stuff along the way as you need it. At lower levels, you might not need to pick up the all resist yet, but once you start trying to get into tier 3 and 4, you're really going to notice you're going to need that stuff. Then we want Heightened Malice, so while an enemy is poisoned nearby, we deal more damage, plus an additional 5% for each poisoned enemy. So this is just a solid node, increases Ashava's damage, increases our Poison Creeper damage. Nice. And then we're going to come up here, we're going to take Ancestral Guidance. So we're going to deal 40% increased damage for 5 seconds after spending 75 Spirit. That's the reason we run this, because it's just all of these other nodes, like this, we can't benefit from this. We can't benefit from this node as well. We don't benefit from this one. We also don't benefit from this because we're never in Werebear. And we also don't benefit from this because we aren't shapeshifting all the time. So we don't actually have a fifth one. I do run Constricting Tendrils, but we actually don't even benefit from Constricting Tendrils because for whatever reason, I don't know. Someone explain to me why all the companion skills don't have the nature magic tag, because to me, summoning a bunch of vines out of the ground seems like nature magic to me, but I don't know. But yeah, so they don't have the nature magic tag, so they don't actually benefit from this, and you could also even get more poison on the enemy if they did. Especially Poison Creeper specifically, like that really just seems like a nature magic ability. Even if you want to say, oh, well, Ravens isn't technically magic, it's like, or like, wolves aren't technically magic. Like, okay, Poison Creeper though, like, come on, like you're summoning vines out of the ground, come on. But yeah, so that's my little rant about that. But we pick up that, get some nice little all resist here. This also has really good, like, kind of spirit fixing in it as well. So I think Ancestral Fortitude is just pretty solid overall for this. Then we have Bane. So I believe this got buffed. I want to say like at the very beginning of Bane's inception, it was like a 5% chance to deal double damage. Well, they've like upped it to 15% now, so that's pretty solid. You also get 10% poison damage out of this, so pretty good. I mean, yeah, like just again, just another solid one for us. And then come up here, and I have Keeper, so we get 15% non-physical damage, and then another 10% non-physical damage. So this is like 25% increased non-physical damage. I did actually go ahead and take this, even though I'm not benefiting from this, because I get 37 willpower. That's the reason I took that node, because it's just 37 willpower. Like, why not, right? Come over here, you get some max life, lucky hit chance, resist all, etc. I actually should adjust. I should actually adjust some things though, because I'm actually pretty close here to like 490. Yeah, so pay attention to like the secondaries, and if you can like change a node around to make sure you're hitting the second one, or the bonus on it, like you might as well do it, right? Like here, you can see I'm hitting the bonus. Here, I just need to literally take like one dexterity node, like anywhere, and I would, yeah, like, heck, right here, literally right here, if I just went this to this, now I have it, right? So pay attention to stuff like that. It's pretty important. Well, I guess it's not that important. It's kind of a minor thing, but from a min-maxing perspective, it's relevant. So yeah, but that is going to be the Paragon. When it comes to actual your mercenary, I go Rahir, Rahir's Aegis for all resist, Bastion, and then Inspiration, because this just gives you like 40% increased damage, which is pretty good. I also like that Valiance. I also just, like, Valiance is pretty cool. I just like having the extra survivability, really, is why I like it. So, and then Bastion's initial cast also grants surrounding allies unstoppable, so that's pretty solid too. If you're struggling getting armor, you could run the Rahir's Guard, go for the armor one, come down here, get Mocking Lure, so you still get somewhat of a damage amp. And then I use Variana with the Ancient Harpoons because it just pulls things in. Pulls things in. You want things to be kind of nice and close to you. I did also try, I think it was called like Wild Bolt Aspect. That one seemed all right. The one that like pulls things in every now and again, but it wasn't as good as like what Variana does and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so that is the Ashava's Grizzly Rage build. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys have a lot of fun with it. You know, let me know if you try it out and you decide to try to push pits and see how far you can go. Let me know how far you get. I have to go to a job, so it's going to be hard for me to like really see how far this can go, but I can tell you just very easily that this is very easily a tier 4 doable build. Like, you will 100% be able to do tier 4 with this build, and probably more than that once you actually have like the gear and the masterworks. Like, it's I don't know, because I honestly don't really have my finger on the pulse of what the actual like most broken build is right now. I don't know what that is, so it's hard for me to say that this is like some super S tier build or something like that, but it definitely is solidly in the A tier. I can guarantee that this is like a solid like A tier type build. It definitely has some strong strengths, but it does have like kind of maybe that one thing where it's like Ashavas isn't very wide, so you have to make sure you're close to things to hit it. You know, it's kind of like the same issue that Wolf Companion Druid had, where it was like, well, the AoE radius is kind of small, so it could make it struggle. I didn't really have any issues doing Infernal Hordes with this, so that's a good thing that it has over the Companion Druid build, but it's definitely not like, you know, what's it called, a Lightning Spear or something like that. But yeah, but anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you all next time.